In the quiet town of Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, a tragedy unfolded that would shock an entire nation. On a cold January evening in 2008, 12-year-old Karissa Boudreau was reported missing by her mother, Penny Boudreau. What began as a missing child case quickly gripped the small community, drawing in friends, neighbors, and law enforcement in a frantic search for answers. Posters of Karissa's smiling face lined storefronts and lampposts, while tearful pleas from her mother at press conferences echoed across the region, pleading for her daughter's safe return. For 2 weeks, the people of Bridgewater held their breath, hoping for a miracle. But on February 9, 2008, those hopes were dashed when Karissa's frozen body was discovered on the bank of the LaHave River. As the town mourned, whispers of suspicion began to emerge. The idyllic image of a tight-knit community was shattered when, months later, it was revealed that the person responsible for Karissa's death was none other than the woman who had begged for her safe return, her own mother, Penny Boudreau. The story of Karissa's murder is one of betrayal and unthinkable choices, rooted in desperation and fueled by the selfish desire to prioritize a romantic relationship over the bond between a mother and her child. It is a tale that left an indelible scar on Bridgewater and serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind even the most familiar faces. Karissa Boudreau was a 12-year-old with a bright smile and an infectious personality. Born in 1995, she was described by her family, friends, and teachers as a kind and caring child who loved animals, enjoyed singing, and had a passion for pop music. Despite her cheerful demeanor, Karissa's life was marked by transitions and challenges. Her parents, Penny and Paul Boudreau, lived apart, leading Karissa to split her time between them. In the months leading up to her tragic death, Karissa had moved to Bridgewater to live with her mother, Penny, and her mother's boyfriend, Vernon McCumber. It was a period of adjustment for the young girl, who had previously lived in Shelburne County with her father and attended Hillcrest Academy. Karissa was struggling to adapt to her new environment, feeling isolated and unhappy in her current living situation. She had not yet formed strong friendships in Bridgewater and often expressed her dissatisfaction with their small apartment. These struggles made her a quieter, more withdrawn version of herself in her new surroundings. Penny Boudreau, born in 1974, was a single mother navigating life with its accompanying challenges. In public, Penny appeared as a caring and devoted parent, one who was involved in her daughter's life and determined to raise her with the best intentions. However, as investigators would later discover, her outward demeanor hid deeper insecurities and troubling priorities. When Penny began dating Vernon McCumber, her life seemed to take a significant turn. She grew deeply invested in maintaining her romantic relationship, sometimes at the expense of her relationship with Karissa. According to friends and acquaintances, Vernon and Karissa didn't get along, which created tension in the household. Vernon's dissatisfaction with Karissa reportedly escalated to the point where he issued Penny an ultimatum. "It's her or me." This choice would lead Penny down a path of unimaginable betrayal. Nestled along the LaHave River, Bridgewater was a small town of approximately 8,000 residents. Known for its scenic beauty and close-knit atmosphere, it was the kind of place where violent crime was almost unheard of. In fact, the last murder in Bridgewater prior to 2008 had occurred in 1992, when a local musician was killed in a stabbing. The rarity of such events only heightened the community's shock and grief when news of Karissa's murder came to light. The town rallied together in the days following Karissa's disappearance. Volunteers distributed missing person flyers, and local churches held candlelight vigils to pray for her safe return. For many, the tragedy felt deeply personal, as though they had lost one of their own. Karissa was affectionately referred to as Bridgewater's daughter, a testament to the community's deep sense of loss. Karissa's family life was complicated. She had a close bond with her father, Paul Boudreau, who had cared for her during the summer and early fall of 2007, before she moved to Bridgewater to live with her mother. Paul, devastated by the loss of his daughter, described her as a loving and spirited child who brought joy to everyone around her. He later expressed regret for allowing Karissa to move back to her mother's home, a decision that haunted him after the tragic events unfolded. The dynamics within Penny's household were far from harmonious. Penny's focus on her relationship with Vernon Macomber created an emotional distance between her and Karissa. Friends and family would later recount that Karissa often felt like a secondary priority in her mother's life, a sentiment that may have deepened her unhappiness in her new living situation. On January 27, 2008, in the quiet town of Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, 12-year-old Karissa Boudreau was reported missing by her mother, Penny Boudreau. Penny informed the Bridgewater police that she and Karissa had a minor argument earlier that day. According to Penny, she left Karissa in their red Dodge Neon in the parking lot of the Bridgewater Mall's Sobeys grocery store while she went inside to purchase a few items. Upon returning approximately 15 minutes later, she claimed that Karissa was gone. Believing her daughter had walked off in frustration, Penny said she drove around searching for her before contacting the police at 8:30 p.m. The initial response from law enforcement was swift. Officers conducted a thorough search of the immediate area, including deploying a ground search and rescue dog to track Karissa's scent. Despite these efforts, there was no trace of the young girl. Given the circumstances and the recent argument, authorities initially considered the possibility that Karissa had run away. In the days following her disappearance, the community rallied together. Missing person posters featuring Karissa's photograph were distributed throughout Bridgewater and neighboring areas. Local businesses displayed her image in their storefronts, and volunteers joined the search efforts, scouring nearby woods and waterways. The police extended their search, utilizing a Department of Natural Resources helicopter to survey the LaHave River and surrounding regions. Despite these extensive efforts, there were no credible sightings or leads. Penny Boudreau made several emotional public appeals during this period. In press conferences held at the Bridgewater police station, she tearfully pleaded for her daughter's safe return, expressing the anguish of not knowing her child's whereabouts. Her distress was palpable, and she urged anyone with information to come forward. As time passed with no sign of Karissa, the situation grew increasingly dire. The police admitted they had no concrete evidence confirming Karissa's presence in the Sobeys parking lot on the day she vanished, as there were no surveillance cameras covering that area. This lack of evidence led to growing concerns and suspicions within the community. The initial phase of the investigation was marked by a lack of concrete evidence and leads. Despite extensive searches and public appeals, there were no eyewitnesses or surveillance footage to provide insights into Karissa's disappearance. The community's support was unwavering, but the absence of tangible clues made the investigation challenging. On January 27, 2008, the chilling chain of events began to unfold. Penny Boudreau had been grappling with increasing tension in her relationship with her boyfriend, Vernon Macomber. Vernon had reportedly issued an ultimatum. He could no longer tolerate Karissa, Penny's 12-year-old daughter, and she would have to choose between him and her child. In an unfathomable decision, Penny chose her relationship over her daughter's life. That evening, Penny drove Karissa to a remote area on William Hebb Road in Hebbville, a quiet spot near Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. Under the guise of having a heart-to-heart conversation, Penny lured her daughter out of the car. What Karissa likely expected to be a resolution to their recent arguments took a horrifying turn. Penny forced Karissa to the ground, pinning her with her knees as she pressed on her chest. Using a length of twine she had brought along, Penny strangled her daughter. As Karissa struggled, clawing at the frozen ground beneath her, she pleaded for her life, crying out, "Mommy, don't." Those would be the young girl's final words. Once Karissa was motionless, Penny wrapped her daughter's lifeless body in a blanket and placed it in the car. She drove to the LaHave River, where she staged the scene to mislead investigators. Pulling down Karissa's pants to suggest a sexual assault, Penny discarded her daughter's body on the snowy riverbank and rolled it into the water. She then disposed of the twine and other evidence in a coffee cup and scattered Karissa's belongings elsewhere to create the illusion of a runaway. Penny returned home and began laying the groundwork for her cover story. She discarded some of Karissa's clothes to reinforce the narrative that her daughter had run away. Later that evening, at 8:30 p.m., she called the police to report Karissa missing. According to Penny, she and Karissa had argued in the parking lot of the Sobeys grocery store at the Bridgewater Mall. Penny claimed that Karissa had chosen to stay in the car while she shopped, and when she returned, her daughter was gone. Over the next 2 weeks, Penny maintained her fabricated story. She participated in public appeals, tearfully asking for Karissa's safe return. Her demeanor seemed convincing enough to garner sympathy from the community and avoid immediate suspicion. However, investigators would later describe her behavior as calculated and deceptive, designed to manipulate those around her. On February 9, 2008, a passerby discovered Karissa's frozen body on the bank of the LaHave River, just outside Bridgewater town limits in Conquerall Bank. The police, now collaborating with the RCMP, faced the daunting task of uncovering the truth behind Karissa's tragic death. When Karissa's frozen body was discovered on the bank of the LaHave River, the focus of the investigation shifted dramatically. Forensic experts descended on the scene, meticulously gathering evidence. The position of Karissa's body, coupled with the partially removed clothing, led investigators to suspect the crime scene had been staged to resemble a sexual assault. This discovery deepened the suspicion that the crime was premeditated. An autopsy confirmed that Karissa had died from strangulation. This finding, paired with the staging of the body, pointed to a calculated and deliberate act. The community, still in mourning over Karissa's death, now grappled with the chilling realization that her murder was not a random act, but an intentional killing. Throughout the investigation, Penny Boudreau maintained her fabricated story. However, inconsistencies in her account and her demeanor began to raise red flags for investigators. Police noted that Penny's emotions seemed rehearsed, and her behavior during interviews appeared calculated rather than genuine. One critical inconsistency was her claim that Karissa had stayed in the car during the alleged argument outside Sobeys. Surveillance footage from the area confirmed Penny had entered the grocery store, but no evidence supported Karissa's presence in the parking lot. This lack of corroboration began to erode Penny's credibility. As investigators delved deeper, they uncovered troubling details about Penny's personal life. Her tumultuous relationship with Vernon McCumber, marked by his ultimatum to choose between him and her daughter, provided a potential motive. Coupled with her suspicious behavior and the staged crime scene, Penny emerged as a prime suspect. Despite growing suspicions, investigators lacked the direct evidence needed to arrest Penny. To uncover the truth, they launched an undercover operation. Police officers posed as members of an organized crime group, approaching Penny with an offer to help her eliminate any evidence linking her to Karissa's death. Believing she could trust these individuals, Penny provided chilling details about the murder. During the covert operation, Penny admitted to strangling Karissa with a length of twine and staging the crime scene to mislead investigators. These admissions were secretly recorded, providing law enforcement with the evidence they needed to move forward. On June 13, 2008, nearly 5 months after Karissa's murder, Penny Boudreau was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The news of her arrest sent shockwaves through the community. Penny, who had once tearfully pleaded for her daughter's return, was now revealed to be the perpetrator of the heinous crime. The arrest marked a turning point in the case, but it also deepened the collective grief of the community. As Bridgewater struggled to come to terms with the betrayal, the legal process to bring Penny to justice began. On June 13, 2008, Penny Boudreau was formally arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of her daughter Karissa Boudreau. The news stunned the community. Investigators cited the damning evidence obtained during their undercover operation, where Penny had confessed to the crime and provided specific details about Karissa's death. Penny's arrest marked a pivotal moment in the case. As she was led into custody, onlookers jeered, expressing their outrage and disbelief. The betrayal was profound, and the community's grief turned to anger. Bridgewater residents, who had rallied around Penny during the search for Karissa, now felt deeply betrayed. Following her arrest, Penny appeared in court to face charges of first-degree murder. The Crown's case was built on a combination of forensic evidence, the undercover operation, and Penny's recorded confession. Prosecutors argued that Penny had premeditated the murder, driven by her desire to salvage her relationship with Vernon McCumber. As the case moved through preliminary hearings, Penny's legal team began negotiations with the Crown. While the evidence against her was strong, there were strategic considerations on both sides. The prosecution wanted to secure a conviction without putting Karissa's loved ones through the ordeal of a lengthy trial. The defense sought to mitigate the severity of the sentence by entering a plea deal. On January 30, 2009, Penny Boudreau appeared in Nova Scotia Supreme Court and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. This plea meant that Penny admitted to killing her daughter but avoided a trial for first-degree murder, which would have required the Crown to prove premeditation beyond a reasonable doubt. During the sentencing hearing, the court heard the harrowing details of Karissa's final moments. Crown Attorney Paul Scoville described how Penny had lured her daughter to a remote location, strangled her with a length of twine, and staged the crime scene to mislead investigators. The courtroom was silent as Scoville recounted Karissa's desperate pleas for her life, crying out, "Mommy, don't." Justice Margaret Stewart sentenced Penny Boudreau to life in prison, with no possibility of parole for 20 years. Addressing Penny directly, Justice Stewart said, "You can never call yourself mother in conjunction with Karissa's name again. The words, 'Mommy, don't,' will haunt you for the rest of your life." The murder of Karissa Boudreau left an indelible mark on her family and the community of Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. For Karissa's father, Paul Boudreau, the loss was compounded by a deep sense of guilt. He expressed regret for allowing Karissa to move back into her mother's custody, a decision he felt had directly placed his daughter in harm's way. Paul described his ex-girlfriend's apology during the trial as insincere, calling it crocodile tears. The pain of losing Karissa remained a constant presence in his life. For the community, Karissa's death was a profound shock. Bridgewater, a small, close-knit town with a population of around 8,000, had not experienced a homicide in over 15 years. Karissa had been affectionately referred to as Bridgewater's daughter during the search for her, and her murder shattered the town's sense of safety and trust. Candlelight vigils and memorial services were held in her honor, and her name became a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating consequences of betrayal. The plea deal, which resulted in Penny Boudreau being sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 20 years, sparked mixed reactions. While some felt justice had been served, others believed the sentence was too lenient given the premeditated nature of the crime. Under Canadian law, Penny could apply for early parole after 15 years under the faint hope clause, a prospect that further fueled public frustration. Prosecutor Paul Scoville defended the decision to accept the plea deal, emphasizing that it spared Karissa's family and the community from the emotional toll of a lengthy trial. The agreement also ensured a life sentence for Penny, which guaranteed she would face significant consequences for her actions. The case of Karissa Boudreau served as a grim reminder of the darkness that can exist behind seemingly ordinary relationships. It highlighted the importance of vigilance in child welfare cases and underscored the devastating consequences of prioritizing personal desires over the well-being of a child. Karissa's story prompted discussions about family dynamics, emotional abuse, and the signs of toxic relationships. For law enforcement, the case reinforced the value of innovative investigative techniques, such as the undercover operation that ultimately secured Penny's confession. Since her sentencing, Penny Boudreau has remained in custody, serving her life sentence. Reports suggest she has maintained a low profile while incarcerated, avoiding public attention and rarely speaking about the crime. The haunting words, "Mommy, don't," as recounted during the trial, have come to symbolize the unimaginable betrayal of a mother's love turned to violence. In the years following Karissa's murder, Bridgewater has worked to rebuild its sense of community and safety. The town's residents continue to honor Karissa's memory through annual memorials and community events. Local leaders have emphasized the importance of fostering open communication within families and communities to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The murder of Karissa Boudreau is a story of unimaginable betrayal, loss, and the enduring pain left in its wake. It is a stark reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the devastating consequences of selfishness and deceit. For Bridgewater, the case remains a symbol of both tragedy and resilience, as the community continues to honor Karissa's memory while moving forward. If you found this narrative compelling, please consider subscribing to our channel for more in-depth true crime stories. Don't forget to like, share, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on our latest content. Thank you for watching.